More announcements of SEC players going pro, including several from Alabama and Jameson Williams, Phil Mathis, and Evan Neal. Tons of more movement in the transfer portal with some big pickups for Florida and LSU, some key departures for a few other schools. Reggie Chatman of Alive 11 News in Atlanta will join us as he was on the field as Georgia beat Alabama Monday night to win the national championship. He'll be at the championship parade this weekend. We'll talk about that. Locked on SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what is happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. Great to have you guys along. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making the Locked On SEC your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On SEC is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube and at LockedOnSEC.com. Let's jump into it. Let's go around the conference.
Boots out to the right. Intercepted. Takes the handoff. Throws. What a catch.
Around the conference.
And we'll start with guys heading to the pros. And a handful of guys from Alabama. Jameson Williams announced he is officially going pro. The Alabama standout wide receiver tore his ACL Monday night in the national championship game, but he announced on Thursday on his Instagram that he is declaring for the NFL draft. He transferred to Alabama after 2 seasons at Ohio State, led Crimson Tide pass catchers in receiving yards, over 1,500 yards and 15 touchdowns this year. He was a Blitnikoff Award finalist, and according to Adam Schefter of ESPN, of course, Williams tore his ACL, but he is still expected to fully recover and retain his sub-4.3 speed. Evan Neal, he also officially declared. A lot of people think he is expected to be a top 5 pick in this year's draft. Could go as high as number 1 overall. So clearly the right decision for him. And then Big Fidarian Mathis goes by Phil Mathis. He officially announced he is heading to the NFL draft. He had a nice year, was named one of Alabama's permanent team captains, recorded 53 tackles, 12 for a loss, 9 sacks, played in 55 career games for Alabama during 4 seasons. Now, in addition to those guys, linebacker Christopher Allen has reportedly signed with an agent, and the expectation is he will officially declare here in the next day or so, but we'll wait for official word on him. Meanwhile, over at LSU, Chasen Heinz has been a key member of LSU's offensive line the last couple of years. He's appeared in 17 games playing at that right guard spot, and he took to Twitter to announce he is officially declaring for the NFL draft. Could have had another final year of college eligibility. LSU is expected to have Cam Wire return. They got a couple transfers coming in, some recruits. So Coach Brad Davis will be rebuilding that O-line for LSU. Speaking of LSU, let's get to the transfer portal. Brian Kelly's staff had a very productive Thursday as it was announced. We know Joe Fouché from Arkansas announced he was transferring to LSU. How about Greg Brooks, another Arkansas DB? He announced he's staying in the SEC West. He is officially committed to transfer to LSU. He's a Louisiana native. Signed with Arkansas in 2019, played in all 13 games for the Razorbacks this year, recording 48 tackles, 4 pass breakups, 2 fumble recoveries. And, of course, Joe Fouché, another Louisiana guy who is transferring from Arkansas to LSU. So 2 DBs from the Arkansas secondary staying in the SEC West and heading over to LSU. But the headliner of the day for the Tigers, Brian Kelly's staff on Thursday night, picked up a commitment from Penn State running back Noah Kane, who's a Baton Rouge native. He came out of the IMG Academy in the class of 2019. Depending on what service you looked at, some had him as a 4-star, some had him as a 5-star. But he was one of the top running backs in the country, signed with Penn State. In his 3 years there, he this year he logged 106 carries for 350 yards, 4 touchdowns. He also can catch the ball as well. That is a nice pickup for LSU, a guy who will figure into competing for a starting running back job immediately at LSU with Ty Davis-Price heading to the pros. So Noah Kane, big pickup for LSU in the transfer portal. Meanwhile, Ole Miss they've seen several of their own players hit the portal. We didn't even talk about it because it came out on Monday when we were talking all things national championship. But John Rice Plumlee from Ole Miss, he is heading to UCF to go play for Gus Malzahn. Yet another SEC guy going to play for Gus at UCF. O-lineman Bryce Ramsey is at Southern Miss. Ole Miss wide receiver Jaden Jackson and running back Tylen Knight. They have yet to make their decisions on where they're going. But another Rebel player, that's a pretty big name, according to Matt Zenitz of On3 Sports. Running back Henry Parish has entered the transfer portal. He was considered the number 18 running back in 2020. As a true freshman, he ran for over 260 yards, 2 touchdowns. Saw that increase this year, recording over 550 yards and 3 touchdowns. Former Rebels running back coach Kevin Smith was hired to the same position at Miami. Parish is a native of that city, so writing on the wall, it looks like he could follow his running backs coach over to the Hurricanes, but we'll wait for that. But again, a clearing out, all new faces in the backfield for Ole Miss next year, with 2 other running backs going pro, Snoop Connor, Jarian Ely, and now Henry Parish entering the transfer portal. Over at Florida, they hired Billy Napier, of course, as their new head coach this offseason, coming over from Louisiana. And it's been a couple of guys to come over from Louisiana to follow Napier to Florida. And on Thursday, the Gators added a running back from the Raging Cajuns, coming off a productive freshman year. Montrell Johnson announced on Twitter he will be heading to Florida to rejoin his former coach. Johnson ran for 838 yards last year with 12 touchdowns. Very productive. So Montrell Johnson coming into the Florida backfield should be an immediate contributor and be really good next year. Over at Auburn, they had another defender enter the transfer portal after 2 seasons on the Plains. Romello Height has entered the portal. He was a 3-star recruit in 2020. Played only 1 game in 2020, but saw that action increase to 9 games this past season. He recorded 19 tackles, including 3 for a loss. Meanwhile, Alabama, they've continued to have guys entering the transfer portal. Alabama linebacker Jalen Moody, who's a member of the 2018 recruiting class. He saw playing time in most games this past season, but he is going into the portal. Recorded an interception in the season opener against Miami this year. Finished the year with 11 total tackles, playing mostly on special teams. So Jalen Moody heading to the portal. In addition, linebacker Shane Lee has reportedly entered the portal. He was a freshman all-SEC pick in 2019, a former top 100 recruit. So Bama kind of cleaning house a little bit with some of the guys that they've had. And look, with the transfer portal being open, you got to imagine Bama will have more guys wanting to jump in after seeing what Jameson Williams just did coming in as a recruit. Of course, Henry Toa from Tennessee, we saw what he did. Speaking of Tennessee, one of their running backs is going to be heading elsewhere. Fred Orr, he officially entered the transfer portal. He joined the Vols as a preferred walk-on in 2019. 2021 3-star tight end Trinity Bell has also reportedly entered the portal. He did not see the field during his true freshman season at Tennessee. Over at Georgia, defensive back Latavius Brini, he is entering the portal. He was a 3-star recruit in 2017. Played in 30 games over the past 4 seasons, so we will see where he ends up. Trevon Morgan over at Kentucky, he transferred in this past offseason. Didn't really see the field, and so Kentucky granted his release, and so he will be entering the transfer portal. And lastly, on Thursday, it was reported that Ole Miss, another person leaving that they're picking up, Jaden Jackson is transferring from Ole Miss to South Alabama. I screwed that all up. But anyway, Jackson leaving Ole Miss, going to South Alabama. So who is coming back, right? This is the news we're looking for. Cameron Latu put together a great season at Alabama, 410 yards, 8 touchdowns. He is coming back. Not a hard decision when you've got the Heisman Trophy winner coming back in Bryce Young. So Cameron Latu is coming back for Alabama. Another name coming back, announced it yesterday on Texags with their buddy Billy Lucci, but Damani Richardson, defensive back for A&M, was one of their leaders this year on that defense. He has made his decision. He will come back next year. He was an SEC all-freshman selection in 2019. Made 71 tackles and a pick that year. Along with his 65 tackles this year, he recorded 3 passes defensed and forced a fumble. So Damani Richardson, a big piece to get back for that Aggie defense. And then Auburn, they lost a few players to the transfer portal already this season, but some good news for them yesterday, as On3 Sports reported that DB Eric Reed Jr., who was a 4-star member of the class of Auburn's 2020 class, he has taken his name out of the portal. He appeared in just 1 game this year, so we will see if Eric Reed will be a contributor for Auburn moving forward. Quick recruiting note, Trevante Citizen, who is the top uncommitted running back of the class of 2022, he released his top 8 teams that he has before he makes his decision. 3 come from the SEC, Auburn, Florida, and LSU, all in that finalist group. Speaking of Auburn, they are announced Thursday that their 2022 A-Day spring game will be held April 9th at Jordan-Hare Stadium. So that will be fun to see Auburn in their spring game. Lane Kiffin, by the way, they're making a little bit of a coaching change. They'll be bringing in his brother, Chris Kiffin, who was expected to leave the Cleveland Browns. He was their D-line coach. He will serve as co-defensive coordinator along with Chris Partridge in Oxford. So Lane and his brother reunited. Meanwhile, Ole Miss, they have a vacancy at the running back coach spot after Kevin Smith left for Miami. According to Matt Zenitz, the Rebels are expected to bring in Marquell Blackwell from Houston to replace Smith moving forward. And there you have it. That is around the conference. Oh, one quick note. Coach Kirby Smart tweeted out he wants any fans not using their tickets for Saturday's parade celebration at Sanford Stadium to pass them on to someone else. So he wants to fill up the stadium, no empty seats. So listen to Kirby if you're a Georgia fan. When we come back, speaking of Georgia, we're going to talk with our buddy from Alive 11 News in Atlanta, Reggie Chatman. You don't want to miss that. That is coming your way next. Thank you guys again for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. And I need you to listen up to this. If you have not downloaded the Get Upside app yet, you need to check it out. This is an app for everybody who buys gas, and you need to know about it. Our listeners are making up to 25 cents for every gallon of gas every time they fill up. You download the Get Upside app, find it on the App Store or Google Play, and when you sign up, make sure you use our promo code SCORE, S-C-O-R-E, and that's going to get you a bonus 25 cents per gallon on your first fill up. That is up to 50 cents cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. Just download the app for free. Use our promo code SCORE, and you'll get up to 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank. Some people who drive a lot making this up to $200 to $300 a month in cash back. There's no catch. The cash back gets added right to your account. You can cash out at any time, straight to your bank account or PayPal or whatever. Get the free Get Upside app. Use our promo code SCORE. Get up to 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank. That is code SCORE on the Get Upside app. And, of course, tons of SEC hoops action happening this weekend. Of course, the NFL playoffs as well. And the one place that you need to know about is BetOnline.ag. They would like to wish you guys a happy new betting year. As we march into the NFL playoffs, BetOnline remains the #1 spot for all the best sports wagering action throughout this year. It's a new year. I got a new updated desktop and mobile website. You can sign up today and receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. If you've never signed up before, use our promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON. That's going to get you your 50% welcome bonus. They got you covered from football to basketball to hockey, boxing, whatever your favorite sport is. They have got it waiting for you. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available throughout this year. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, it is where the game starts. Rolling along here, Locked On SEC, and man, it has been a super busy week for basically everybody in the state of Georgia. I mean, they are still, there's some people who haven't gone to sleep since Monday night, and one of those guys is a guy who covers the Georgia Bulldogs from Atlanta, Georgia, in 11 Alive News in Atlanta. He is our buddy Reggie Chatman, and he joins us right now. Reggie, welcome in, man. Hope you got some sleep sometime this week.
Nah, man, it's going to continue to go until we get finally through the parade on Saturday, man. I mean, the grind does not stop, but look, I mean, it's a lot of fun covering this team, man, and the win is a win, big time like that as well.
Well, I mean, let's brag on Atlanta sports for a little bit because I saw you in Atlanta. I get to travel with the Houston Astros and got to go to, be at all the World Series games, and I saw you all along the way. But, man, for you making the jump, I mean, you got to cover LSU in the national championship in 2019 working in Louisiana, and then you jump to Atlanta, and suddenly you get to cover an Atlanta Braves World Series and a Georgia Bulldogs championship. If there's a team out there having a drought, man, they got to bring Reggie Chatman to their city soon, right?
Look, I've been telling them that, man. Look, I've only been in Atlanta for 6 months, and all of that has already happened. I mean, look, I've done a good job. I really have, but I'm not a miracle worker. I can't get the Falcons to win anything, and obviously the Hawks are going way downhill. They're trading everybody, but I knew I could handle at least those two teams. I could get to the promised land, and that's what we did.
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, a 41-year drought or a 40-plus year drought for the Georgia Bulldogs. Take us back to Monday night when they're trailing at halftime. It's a defensive battle. It's a field goal fest. What's the mood right there? What's everybody feeling?
Well, it was weird because it felt like this really could go either way. I think, but the things that really popped out on film or from what you could see from that game is that these guys were really hitting. I mean, it was a very different game than it was the first one, of course. I mean, lots of field goals, defensive stands. I mean, teams not necessarily taking full advantage of what they were trying to do, but I think when you just saw the way that Georgia's team was moving, and it looked a lot different defensively. You're getting to Bryce Young, you're making him feel him, you're getting to his head, you're pushing him around. I mean, they're way more physical in the second game, getting to the pass than they were in the first game. I mean, Bryce tore them up in that first game because he had all the time in the world. This one didn't have all the time. And, of course, he didn't have his weapons either. So at halftime, you're feeling like this game really could go either way. Georgia fans probably felt like they still had a good shot because if they were out of it in the first half, they were done. But when you see it, keep it that close in the first half of the game, really could have gone either way. And it was really set up what was a fantastic second half.
When they called, the sack on Stetson Bennett, and it looks like it's an incomplete pass, but the ball comes out, Bama guy just tiptoes in, gets the ball. They call it Alabama ball, they review it, and it stands as Alabama's ball, and they're getting the short field there. Did that feel like a momentum shifter? Like, oh man, is this it? Like Alabama's going to go punch this thing in and never look back. Is that what it felt like at that moment?
Absolutely. And it felt like one of those moments. I mean, look, I don't speak for Twitter, but I'll tell you what Twitter was kind of feeling like from my end, because that's kind of what it felt like in the building as well. I mean, when that happened, it felt like, oh, God, once again, Alabama's getting the benefit of the doubt. The refs are on their side, blah, 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 blah. I don't think any of that stuff is true necessarily, but it did feel like that was kind of the turning point. Like that's when things could really change. Of course, they scored on that drive, which really made you feel like, all right, this could kind of be the end here. Like, this is classic Alabama. They get the breaks they need to. Georgia, of course, they haven't outgained them in yards. They haven't outgained them in first downs. They have more penalties, and they finally made the mistake that will allow Alabama to take over. But, I mean, since that play, the play of Stetson Bennett was unbelievable, kept them in that game. It really had them to win it.
Let's talk about that fourth quarter, because that's where things really started to change, and the momentum and the big plays for Georgia, and Stetson Bennett, a couple of monster throws. I mean, you had to feel like, oh, okay, this is kind of what we saw all year from Georgia, but it also had to feel like, man, these guys have taken a beating all game, and for them to be able to step up and make these big plays when it matters most, it was almost surreal, right?
It was crazy too, because it felt like we really have not had to see any of that all season long for Georgia. I mean, they've been comfortably winning games the entire season. The one game that they didn't play well in the fourth quarter was that SEC championship game, because at the end of the day, Alabama put it on them, right? And so you saw a different team when they came back and played against Michigan, a new focused team. They looked better. They looked definitely better in that fourth quarter. They were really hitting as well. And I think that extra time to reset that SEC championship loss really refocused this team that knew that they wanted to be in this position. Once they got into that fourth quarter, they were rolling. It did not look like the same fourth quarter team that you saw in the SEC championship game, and both offensively and defensively. It looked a little bit sharper. Stetson Bennett locked in after that fumble. I mean, defensively, they were swarming around well. You get the interception there. I mean, and you can see all the emotion after the game as well. I mean, this Georgia team wanted this game, and this was the one that they focused on. And, of course, it felt a little sweeter beating that Alabama team that's really had their number for the last many, many years.
Somebody compared it to me. They said it was kind of like the Saints winning the Super Bowl over Indianapolis, where it was defensive early, you catch a little momentum, but the pick six is what seals it. Talk a little bit about the demographic. I mean, it felt like there were more Georgia fans there than anybody else. Is that what it looked like to you where you were there? And did it feel like the roof was going to come off the stadium there in Indianapolis when the pick six happens?
Man, it was crazy. I mean, of course, there's a lot of red in the building, so it's hard to necessarily tell who is who. So you're just listening to the voices, you're listening to the sound, and you could tell that it meant a lot to just Georgia fans to be back in the championship game against Alabama, a chance to, make a trip to Indianapolis. And it was loud, very, very loud. And when that moment, that interception happened, it looked like the stadium was going to blow up. I mean, the crowd was going crazy. The fans were running up and down the aisleways and hugging. And one thing that me and my colleague Maria Martin were talking about after the game is that, with Alabama, of course, they win national championships. They've won plenty of them recently to where it feels like almost the expectation and kind of their standard, of course. And so when they win a championship, it's obviously a big deal. They're excited, but man, it just felt different with Georgia winning it. I mean, it's been 41 years. There were actual tears on the sidelines. I mean, we were in the tunnel as the families are running onto the field. It was tears. And I mean, it was really an emotional day, an emotional time. And when they had that pick six, I mean, Keely Ringo running that thing in, it was the moment that really set everything off that this really could finally be it. Because it feels like at the end of the day, it's Georgia. It's the state of Georgia, a bit of Atlanta, all that stuff. I mean, even with the Braves, when they were up by 7 runs in the final game of the World Series, people were still worried that they were going to lose. It's a similar thing, especially against an Alabama team that has that much firepower. You felt like, well, maybe they could still kind of come back. But after that Brock Bowers touchdown, you felt a little bit better. That pick six really sealed it off. You thought, this is it. They're going to win this game. And I think that's where fans really lost their minds.
More with Reggie Chatman right after this. Real quick, it is the new year, so that means New Year's resolutions. If yours is about getting fit or just eating healthier, you need to make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, but sometimes even better than a candy bar. Why is that? Well, it contains half of everything that candy bars have. Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, don't get me wrong, but many Built Bars contain only 130 calories, 4 grams sugar, 4 grams net carbs, 17 grams of protein packed in there. That's why they are perfect after a workout. Just did a weightlifting session. You want to pack on that protein. You compare that to candy bars, which are usually double in calories, quadruple in grams of sugar and all of that. And the deal is this, guys, for the new year, if you go to all those spots where you stash treats, and look, if you're like me at work and you have a desk and you stash chips or cookies or whatever, take all those out, throw them in the trash, and replace them with Built Bars. And look, they've got tons of different flavors. They've got something for everybody, from the coconut almond to peanut butter brownie, raspberry, cookies and cream, whatever it is. Go to their website right now, built.com. Make sure you use our promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off your first order if you've never ordered from them before. Again, use our promo code LOCKED15. That will get you 15% off at built.com. Start making some healthier choices as we get going into 2022. Thank you guys again for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. We're continuing our conversation with Reggie Chatman from 11 Alive News in Atlanta. And Reggie, I want to talk a little bit more about the aftermath. Georgia wins. Kirby Smart holds up the trophy. It starts to sink in that this is real. What was the experience like? I mean, from that moment on through the post game and the players talking and all that, I mean, I got to think it was cold as hell in Indianapolis, but it must have felt like the fans didn't care about the temperature. They were out and celebrating into the night.
Look, and I'll tell you, there's plenty of spots in Indianapolis to go, and thankfully the way that Indy is set up, you can really get anywhere without actually having to go outside. So a lot of the ways it was easy for them. But I mean, I'll tell you, man, the energy on the field was crazy. I mean, you're looking around. Of course, James Cook's brother, Dalvin Cook, was out there on the field. I talked to him. He was talking about how proud he was of him, how just proud he was to be his brother, and the fact that he was able to play that well on that biggest stage. We talked to multiple players, and we talked to Stetson Bennett's mom, who really could not hold in the emotion from what it was being out there, seeing her son play as well as he did on the biggest stage. I mean, you saw a little bit of everything. You could, like I said in the last segment, you could really tell it meant a lot to these people. So much to these people, so much to these players, these fans, the people that are connected to this program. It was a big moment. I mean, you could see the emotion on the AD's face. I mean, it was crazy just being out there. And for the fans' sake, they were going ballistic on the sidelines, the ones that actually made the field. So much so, and that's actually something that we talked about. Because it had been so long, we figured there'd be something crazy happen, like fans actually hopping onto the field, trying to rush the field. We saw a couple of those. I mean,
Right.
they had to drag people off the field. One guy actually, I think, made it the farthest. He jumped on the field, made it about the 40, and then slipped on confetti before falling, and then them dragging him off the field. I mean, it was really pandemonium out on that field, and I mean, for good reason. I mean, it has been a long time since they won it. You could feel that emotion all the way out the building.
Let's talk a little bit about this weekend, because I know the championship trophy has been making its moves at the different Walmarts around Athens and all that. And I know they'll continue with that in the coming months. Everyone's going to get a chance to take their picture with the trophy. But the parade this weekend, I'm sure you guys have plans to be out there and cover it. What's coming down the pike on Saturday?
Man, we should be having some sort of live stream. We're going to have me and Maria Martin out there in Athens, Georgia this weekend just to break it down. And look, I'm hoping that the parade goes a little bit better than the one that went for the Braves. That was the fastest parade I've ever been to because the floats were flying through the streets. I'm hoping that they learn from that experience and do it a little slower, give some fans that have been waiting out there all day to actually get a chance to see the players. And I mean, I think it's going to be an absolutely electric environment. I mean, Athens is a great city for a great college town. I think there's going to be plenty of opportunities for fans to really have a good time. And I think when it's been this long, and like I've said before, I think the fact that you beat Alabama to do it, if they beat some other team, if they gone and beat Cincinnati, or let's say everything was switched around, you beat a Michigan team, or if they don't lose in that SEC championship game, who knows who they would have played. I mean, I think the fact that they beat Alabama made it way sweeter just because of how much they've beaten them recently. This was just the one team they needed to get over the hump and beat if they wanted to win a national title, and they did it. So this one's going to feel really sweet. It's going to be a party out in Athens this weekend. I know it.
As we turn the page and start to look ahead to the future, Kirby's now gotten the monkey off his back. He's finally broken through. He's finally beat Saban. But I've had people ask me this week, does this mean the start of a dynasty for Georgia? One can never be enough. It's always, does this mean Georgia's going to be in this every year and they're coming to, the playoff and they're here to stay? What's your thought on Georgia? Is this a program? I mean, obviously you're still recruiting at an elite level, but is this a program that can be in the playoff, in future years to come?
I don't see any reason why not. I mean, honestly, it's Kirby Smart's built a program at this point where you're bringing in so many 4- and 5-star guys that, like, there's guys that are not playing that are just going to, that are on the sidelines just waiting for their opportunity that are absolute studs. It's similar because Kirby, of course, comes from that Nick Saban tree where you recruit a lot, you recruit a certain amount of players, and you build your program a certain type of way. And I think Kirby's created a program where there's enough guys behind the guys that are starters that can really take over and be studs down the line. And you're getting enough of those guys back to where you feel pretty good about it. And you've recruited in a way that really helps. I think one of the issues for this Georgia team all season long, despite the fact that defense was historical, is they felt like they didn't have enough talent, I guess, in the defensive backs. I mean, and it's not necessarily because of the talent, it's just because of the numbers. Guys actually transferring out, guys not available, guys being hurt. I mean, guys getting suspended, COVID stuff. I mean, they had a lot of issues defensively on the back end, and they recruited to that. They recruited that, made it a big point of emphasis to bring in some DBs. And I think that's really the point. Kirby is going to try and find the problems that are the problems and fix them. And that's one of the biggest things for them. I think they're a team that will be in this position just strictly based off of this. It's just now, can Kirby, because of the fact he's been part of championship teams under Saban, can he take that same ideals that he learned from Saban and try and keep his team hungry, knowing that, one, everybody's going to be after them this next season. Their schedule is going to be adjusted. Everybody's going to get their best shot because they're the national champions. It's trying to keep that momentum going forward. And I think that, honestly, I have to equate it to just LSU because I was there in that 2019 team. I don't see it being that same similar situation. I think that Kirby has built a better program, and he's a better coach than maybe what Ed Orgeron was being able to do, was more of a master motivator than anything else. You've got all the talent. LSU had all the talent coming back, but they didn't have the coaching that they needed. They lost enough coaches to other places. They lost enough players. I think Georgia has enough sustainability and enough coaching, enough ability to be able to keep this going for the next couple of years.
I'm going to hit you with a really tough question. Who is the starting quarterback week 1 next year at Georgia?
Man, I mean, that is the toughest question because, look, that press conference, the champions press conference the next morning, of course, I don't know if people have seen the clips and stuff with Stetson Bennett being like, you could tell he was still a little intoxicated after the night before. But, and people asked him, they said, what's kind of your goal? What do you kind of see kind of coming next for you as a player at Georgia? Will you be coming back? And he said that he hasn't really decided yet. I think it's really interesting because there's so many aspects, because do you go with Stetson Bennett because he's won the national title for you, or do you feed into the hype of everybody saying, look, you got this 5-star guy in JT Daniels, or do you move on and go with Brock Vandagriff, who, I mean, in the moments we saw him, personally, I didn't think that he looked great, but he has all the potential in the world to be a really good athlete. And you bring a Gunnar Stockton, who, of course, comes in as the newest recruit for your team as well. I think my choice, because if you're going through fall camp and you see what happens, if Stetson Bennett comes back, I think it's his job to lose. I think, he wins you a national championship. I think that garners enough respect. If he decides to come back, he will be your starter week 1. But if he decides to, move on, or if they talk him into maybe transferring somewhere else, or creates an opportunity, because it does, with Stetson coming back, it does create an issue where does JT stay, or does Brock stay, or does Gunnar continue to stay on scholarship? I mean, it creates so many issues. But because he won a national championship, it gives him, I guess, first right to decide if he wants to come back, I think. So my idea is Stetson's probably going to stay. And if he stays, I think he's the starter week 1. It's his job to lose. And if he loses it and they mess around and they don't play well, then they'll pull him out there. But I think they really like Stetson, and they'll keep him in there if he's back.
Yeah, it almost feels like an element of, hey, man, we love you for what you did, but the odds that you repeat that again, maybe we go with the higher recruited guys, the guys who are quote unquote more talented. I don't know. It's a tough decision. Look, they got plenty of time to figure that out, and I'm sure 1 or 2 guys will hit the transfer portal. That's just the reality we live in now. I mean, and you still have Caleb Williams out there kind of looming. Where's he going to end up?
Look, if Georgia gets Caleb Williams, it's a wrap. Stetson, you got to go, man. I'm sorry. They're going to look. Yeah. I appreciate everything you've done, but look, we're going to have to make some sort of change here. And that's really what it is. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to try and balance kids either coming back or enter the transfer portal. It's a tough business in that regard. So you have to decide, Stetson, thank you for this national championship, but we might have to move on from you to make sure we don't lose the future. But is that the smart move when he could be your right now because he just won your national championship? So it's tough job, tough situation for Kirby, but I mean, not a bad position to be in when you've got that much talent in the quarterback room.
Reggie Chatman, 11 Alive News. Again, you mentioned you guys will be out there with parade coverage all on Saturday, and I'm sure you can find that at your website. Just type in 11 Alive News. And follow him on Twitter, at Reggie Chatman. Great follow, covering all things, of course, Atlanta sports, but Georgia Bulldogs and everything else. Reggie, appreciate the time as always, man, and we'll do it again soon.
Absolute pleasure, man. Thank you again. Talk soon. Right.
Thanks a lot. That's Reggie Chatman of 11 Alive News there in Atlanta. Does a tremendous job, and appreciate him taking some time out. That is just about going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Again, remember to check us out on YouTube. Just search Locked On SEC. You can subscribe there. Of course, we're wherever you find your podcasts, just type LockedOnSEC.com. And we appreciate you guys for making us your first listen every day. Now you can go make your second listen. Check out the Locked On Bets podcast with your boy Q and Lee Sterling, giving you all the picks you need for SEC hoops going into this weekend. I'm Chris Gordy. That's going to do it for today's show. We'll talk to you guys on Monday right here on Locked On SEC.